if I may read to you, sorry, 16.6, he says this: if the Menteri Besar ceases to command the confidence of the majority of the members of the Legislative Assembly. Now, mind you, this is not only a perception of the Sultan. The Menteri Besar went to see him. In the lingo of criminal law, he made an admission to the Sultan. He lost the confidence. So there is no more inquiry needed to be done. He lost the confidence. So the Sultan, frankly, doesn't have to do any more inquiry. Now, he then requested for dissolution. The section further, the article further goes on to say, then, unless at his request, His Royal Highness dissolves the Legislative Assembly, he shall tender the resignation of the Executive Council. So if he has lost the confidence of the majority of the members of the Assembly, and when he makes the request for the dissolution and the Sultan says no, he is duty bound to resign together with his exco. That is as clear as daylight to me, the provision of 16.6. There is no dispute about it. The other thing that you need to know is, it talks about the confidence of the majority of the members of the Legislative Assembly. It does not say the confidence of the Legislative Assembly or members in the Legislative Assembly. The point that I'm driving home is this, that the Sultan only need to be satisfied that it is the numbers that matters. Whether they are sitting in the Legislative Assembly or not is not material. Especially when the Legislative Assembly was not in session. I will come to that nice legal point in a short while. Now, that's what the Sultan did. Now, the Dato' Sri Nizar, with the greatest of respect to him, refuses to resign, and that's when you would remember this famous statement of Mohon untuk Neraka. He refuses to resign. Now, but what did the Sultan do? The Sultan, person eminent in the aspect of law, decided that, well, he is deemed to have resigned, and therefore decided to invite the new Menteri Besar as suggested by either by the Deputy Prime Minister or by the Prime Minister himself. That was Dato' Zamri, to be the MB and therefore to form his own new exco. And that's about the time when Mr. Karpal Singh threatened to sue the Sultan, and the various heated words used that probably resulted in Mr. Karpal being charged with the sedition charge, as you can appreciate recently. Now, whether Mr. Karpal committed sedition is another story. Well, we are not going into that because that's another chapter altogether. Now, you will see that the Sultan embarked on similar mechanism in 2009, January, February, as he did in March, April of 2008. Because he called both parties, he interviewed them. In 2009, he interviewed the three, or rather the four, state assemblymen whose affinity was rather questionable. The three who became independent, and the one who rejoined Barisan Nasional. And he determined for himself that they are actually with Barisan Nasional for purposes of voting and purposes of maintaining confidence. And it is on that aspect, that it is with that in mind, that he appointed the new Menteri Besar and the Exco. Now, there are interesting issues that will be posed. One is, can the Sultan refuses request for dissolution, which was made by Nizar? Second, if that is legal, can he appoint the new Menteri Besar and the Exco based on who he thought had the confidence of the House? Now, I've answered that question to you in greater part. Namely, he can do that because 16.6, in fact, is available in his hands. In fact, there are many other provisions that seem to be repeating, to be emphasizing the powers of the Sultan. Many of us have taken the powers of the Sultan for granted. Whether you're Malays or non-Malays is immaterial, because we are all, our culture is the culture of monarchy. It is imbibed in us, but we take the powers of the Sultan to be for granted because we think that they are for ceremonial purposes, holding the grace, granting award, datuk-ship and tansri-ship here and there. But we have forgotten that the Sultan plays a very critical role in our constitutional mechanics. And I will come to that in a short while. On 6 February, Speaker Mr. Sivakumar filed suits to declare the 3 seats vacant. I must complete that. This was in 6 February. 7 February, Mr. Speaker submitted 2 letters to the Sultan of Perak seeking permission to convene an emergency meeting. This is very important. I got this. In fact, I thought I made a mistake, but I checked this from various sources. 7 February, he sent this letter. He wanted to have permission to convene an emergency sitting. Now, why is this very important? This is very important because you remember, later on there is a dispute about the sitting under the tree. Now, the reason I mention this is because Mr. Speaker obviously realized that he needs the permission of the Sultan under Standing Order 8 for a proclamation by the Sultan, even if it is a prolonged adjournment as compared to, or rather as contrasted with a prorogue situation. He requires that proclamation from the Sultan. Now, I don't have any facts to say that the Sultan consented or not, but the matter seems to have been lost. The Sultan probably didn't reply to him, maybe he didn't consent to a sitting. 13 February, which is about 6 days later, Menteri Besar Zamri and all other 6 excos were issued with summons to show cause, apparently upon a complaint by the Canning Garden State Assemblyman Wong Kar-Wah to the Committee of Powers and Privileges, and they were preferred with certain charges. Now, I recently managed to get a copy of this summon, and I was astonished to see the way this was drafted. Now, there is a preamble. The preamble says, Tuan Yang Dipertua yang berkenaan bahawa suatu kemungkinan kebebasan telah dilakukan oleh kamu adalah terikat merujukkan perkara ini kepada jawatan kuasa lampiran B. Manakala Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Muhammad Nizar Jamaluddin telah dilantik secara sah dan di bawah undang-undang sebagai Menteri Besar Perak di bawah artikel 12 Undang-Undang Tubuh Perak, yang mana pelantikan adalah sah sehingga terdapat jawatan. So basically he says, look, Nizar is still the MB as a preamble. Second, he says the State Assembly did not vote out Nizar in the vote of no confidence. Third, it says the state constitution contains neither express nor implied power for dismissal of the Menteri Besar, and therefore, he says, these are the charges that were brought against you for wrongly holding out as MB. Number 2, unlawful formation of the Exco. Number 3, illegal occupation of State Secretariat. 4, contempt of House. 5, embarrassing Nizar and the Exco of Nizar. And 6, against the 5 principle of Rukun Negara, especially not displaying good behavior and morality. And 7, bringing the august body into disrepute, public ridicule, odium and scandal. And these were the charges. Now you will note, if I may call, Dato' Zamri and company, they didn't do anything other than to accept what the Sultan has in fact imposed upon them, namely the appointment of the MB